take, the legislature with its third pay raise in 2 years, and the governor getting a housing allowance. He doesn't even have a house that's owned by the state, so he gets to pocket that, right? And
I guess so. You know what? I never knew that the governor of Massachusetts had a housing allowance.
Well, this is the first time.
Is it really?
It's the first time this year. Yeah.
How does that work?
You'll have to run and let us know.
It's the only way I'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I don't get is, so in most states have a governor's mansion, but Massachusetts and a few other states don't. Rhode Island doesn't. The smaller states don't because, ordinarily, and most of the time, the governor lives within commuting distance. The last time there was a governor from New Bedford was in the 1850s, so it's been a while. But most of the time, the governor's from the Boston area, so it's kind of a moot point. But I don't get the rationale for it.
$65,000. I mean, it's a lot of money, and everybody. I mean, third pay raise in 2 years for the legislature.
Yeah,
well, the governor's
I don't get it. I really don't get it.
The governor's actually, when you add in the housing allowance and everything else, he's going to wind up going from $151 to I think it's $252,000 all total. That's a big increase. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a big increase. The legislative pay increases I don't really get. It's I think their base pay. The base pay now is something like $67,000. It's not, but it's not a full-time job, right? It's at least in theory a part-time legislature. So, and I think they may well be the highest-paid legislators in the country. So I don't know. I mean, I don't quite get it.
The governor is now, as of today, the highest compensated governor in the entire country.
I believe it.
Jerry Brown was number one until today.
You want these things. You don't want the salaries for public officials to be flat in perpetuity, right? I mean, the approach that I've taken. So the salary of Mayor of New Bedford is indexed right to inflation. And what I've done, what Mayor Lang did before me, was to say, look, I will opt out of the indexing, right? I'll stay with the same salary I'm getting the day I walked into office as the day I walk out of office. And I think that was an approach that made sense to me, and I stuck with that. So whenever I'm done being the mayor, we'll reset it to whatever it would be for the next person, right? So it doesn't look self-serving in that way. But at the state level, they've taken a different approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So will that day be this year, or?
I said I led with my chin on that one. I don't know, Barry. It's just barely 2019.
Well, it is an election
year. It's January 2nd.
Yeah, your term expires this year. Can you believe that already?
Actually, it would expire 2020, right?
Yeah, it would expire in 2020. But if you're going to,
so this is the halfway mark of my current term.
In today's day and age, I mean, campaigns they don't stop. They just go forever and ever.
I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean,
every time I come on your show, I notice.
But I mean,
are you running? Are you running? Are you running?
The day after the 2016 presidential thing, I mean, already we were, talking about 2020, and now we've got candidates. Liz Warren is.
But that's not a good thing, right? That's not a good thing. The perpetual campaign.
I think people are really sick of it. I think people are really tired of that.
Yeah.
And of course, when you get 24 hours, 7 day a week,
that's the answer.
News media.
That's my answer to your question.
We'll revisit that one at some point. So, what do you think, Liz Warren? I mean, we talked about this before the election in November. It's unfortunate that our U.S. senator, whether you're a Liz Warren fan or not, is going to be tied up with a campaign for the next 2 years. And
yeah, I didn't see I guess she announced that she's forming an exploratory committee, which is sort of makes it kind of a foregone conclusion. It's not going to surprise anybody. Look, I mean, this happens. It's not unique to her, right? So there will probably be 10 other senators that will make a similar announcement sometime in the next 2 or 3 months, right? And about whom you can say the same thing, right? That they'll be campaigning and not spending a whole lot of time working on governance. And I think it's not unique to Democrats. It's Republicans, it can be accused of the same thing, but it gets to the point you just made, which is, the problem of perpetual campaigns that were, constantly, at it all the time instead of just, and I think it's a symptom in Washington. It's a bigger deal in Washington than it is at the state and the municipal level, right, where you have just this constant back and forth of between each side and not, hey guys, let's figure out how we can solve problems and set the country up better in the long run, and that just lends itself to perpetual campaigning. I think that the whole mentality does, and that's why a lot of really good people are checking out of working in for the federal government. And a lot of good people don't run for Congress and don't bother because they just don't see it as a productive activity. It's one of the things that's attractive, frankly, about municipal government. You have these days, I think, probably the most talented cohort of mayors in the country, maybe in the country's history, because I think people feel like it's at the municipal level where things are getting done, where there isn't a focus on partisanship, on what the other guy's saying, and knocking down the other person, as opposed to just figuring it all out, because it's a very accountable job, as we know, but it's all if you're getting stuff done, it can be very satisfying. And that's why I see a lot of really good people going into mayor's positions around the country these days, probably more so than ever.
Well, it certainly is no secret I'm not a Liz Warren fan.
No.
Surprise, surprise. Big revolution on the first day of the year,
really?
Right? Second day of the year.
Really?
I am not a Liz Warren fan.
Was it the eggnog?
Look, I'll tell you what. If Elizabeth Warren wants to run for president, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
It's her right to do it. It's a free country. It's great. If she sees that as her calling, she wants to do it. That's fine. The problem that I have with it, the way that she did it, and others do it as well, is that she just completed a term. If she knew in November that she was going to do this, so why not in November say, you know what, I'm going to leave the seat to somebody who can be a full-time active senator, and I'm going to run and chase my dream as president. Then I could support that, and I could appreciate that and respect that decision. But to get elected and then say, okay, now I'm checking out. I'm going to be collecting $174,000 a year to be a senator, but for the next 2 years, I'm going to be in Iowa and all of these other places where I have to be to get elected. Does that concern you as a chief executive that one of our 2 U.S. senators is going to be pretty much on the road for the next 2 years? And not
well,
really...
I mean, as I said, I think it's the problems with the entire Senate and the entire Congress for engaging, as I was getting at before, engaging in an approach to governing that is all about finger pointing and one upping somebody, as opposed to actually sitting down and getting stuff done. So I think it's just it's the times we live in, and that's why the focus that's why, frankly, much responsibility has fallen to the local level and to a lesser extent the state level too, because Washington's just not getting the job done.
Because if you need something as a mayor, you pick up the phone and sorry, Mayor, she's in Sheboygan today, and can't help you. It makes it more difficult for you to do your job.
Although most of my interaction with the federal government is at the agency level. I mean, as you know, we've interact a lot with the EPA and with NOAA, the Department of Transportation, a few other the federal law enforcement agencies. That's where our most of the work is done. Years ago, when I talked to John Bullard about this, when he was mayor and when others, Jack Markey was mayor, that you could go to Washington and have conversations with congressmen and senators about specific things that you'd like to see in the budget, right? Namely earmarks, right? And because that stuff doesn't happen anymore, there's less of a basis to frankly lobby for stuff on Capitol Hill. I mean, I do most of the work that I do on with the federal delegation is just on broader stuff, right? Here's the latest with the fishing industry. Here's where you can be helpful, that kind of thing. But it's just the occasions are fewer and farther between nowadays in the absence of
so do you actually have
real
less
earmarks.
access to them?
No, less
As
access, less of a reason, less of a reason to deal with them. Yeah, I mean, we deal with their staff to staff a lot on fishing and issues. That's by far the biggest subject matter that we, interact with them on. But most of what takes place there is not legislation, like the Magnuson-Stevens Act. Wasn't reauthorized in the last Congress. I went down, as you know, I testified on the House side about reauthorization. It didn't happen, and so most of what we try to do in the way of advancing the interests of the fishing industry is really at the regulatory level. It's with NOAA, it's with the New England Fisheries Management Council. It's not so much with Congress.
We are, by the way, how you doing, Mayor? I just kind of wandered in.
I wandered in. I heard you ahead of time. You busted John for texting and driving.
Yeah, were you texting and driving, John? No, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do that, would you?
No,
you're just smiling at me over here.
All hands-free, Bear. It was all hands-free.
Okay, so the holidays were good?
The holidays were swell. It was good. Hung out with the family.
Swell. I haven't heard that word in a while. Swell.
Swell.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good to kick back and relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And we went skiing.
No kidding.
We went skiing.
Well, where'd you find snow? Well, I guess they've got it up in northern New England, right?
Yeah, although it rained a lot.
That's what God wants it.
Yeah, evidently, yeah. So it was pretty slushy, but it's fun. It's a nice family activity, and I feel blessed that I can afford to do that for my kids because it is expensive. And I didn't ski as a kid. I'm glad that I can do that for my kids. And I know that not every kid gets an opportunity to do that. And so it was good to spend time together.
We should do some skiing over the golf course hill. We used to do our toboggans there. Can you still do that? Are we allowed to do that?
Well, I still at the Whale, right? I mean, I don't know. We don't get as much snow as we used to.
No.
Right?
Well, when I was a kid, we used to do toboggans and sleds and all of that. Is that still allowed over there?
Over at the landfill or over at the golf course? Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
You can go down the big hill there. And yeah, so you can do that. You can skis.
I'm not saying that we are authorized to do it, but yeah, everybody did it. Yeah.
Yeah, we all did it growing up. So it's still permissible. I mean, when it snows.
I'm not saying I don't want to be giving. I know that happens. It's been happening for 50 years. And,
well, I mean, it was a big thing back.
It's still. I think when we get enough snow, it is. It's probably been. I think I did it. The last time I did it was maybe about 8 years ago, I guess, with my kids over at the Whale. Two of them went off the cliff.
Oh, no.
The toboggan. One was laughing, one was crying, at the bottom. It was, but yeah, it's always been a good spot. I just don't want people to say, hey, Mayor, my kid just went off the cliff and you said it was okay to go over there. So we know it happens. It's a great place. It's lots of fun.
Got a story here about a guy that went on a roller coaster at, I think it was Universal. Skull Island, Reign of Kong. Mm-hmm. And the guy was from Guatemala and apparently doesn't speak English. And he didn't read the sign or couldn't read the sign because it was in English and not Spanish, saying if you got a bad heart, don't go on this ride.
Oh, no.
And oops.
The guy had a heart attack?
Died.
Oh, geez. That's awful.
So, yeah. So that kind of relates to what you're talking about here. So read the signs before you right?
Yeah. Geez, that's terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so what's new with the Wood investigation? You got some?
They're working their way through their emails. I mean, they're going through, doing searches through, roughly 8 years of emails, starting from 2009 when the wood came into the city's possession for storage, and through up through this 2018. So they're making progress. I checked in with Sandy Vizina. I think they're more than halfway done with that search, and so they're moving through it right now. So hopefully we'll, they know that there's an expectation on my part that they get that done as quickly as possible, and it need to be expeditious but thorough as well. And that in that those emails, there's been a set of those emails that have been sent over, as I mentioned last time, to the district attorney's office, and when it's all been collected, the rest will go over as well, so that they're apprised of it. And as I said, I don't have reason to believe that there was any criminal conduct going on, but we want to make sure that that the district attorney can make that call ultimately.
So the last time we spoke, the last time you were here, the status at that point was that the folks that were doing the inquiry, the personnel department, were reviewing still, handing things over to the police chief, and the chief
Right.
was about to hand things over to the DA. So that has happened at this point?
Yeah, so they've given over, I can't tell you specifically, but there's like the first set of stuff has gone over, and the DA's office has assigned somebody to it, so they're reviewing it as they see fit.
So it's technically proper then to say that the district attorney's office is reviewing the information collected so far?
As far as I know, yes, but obviously that's a question for them to say, what they've looked at.
Any idea whether any of that wood's been used locally in town?
I'm not aware of that. Yeah.
No. So as far as you know, it like left the area, it's gone?
So when you say there's an it, right? So it's not like this is a divisible set of items, and what they're trying to do at Sandy Vizina and where the help is necessary of the police department is trying to figure out like whether it was broken up, and if so, to whom, and so forth. So that's part of the inquiry.
Since this all began a few weeks ago, have you picked up the phone personally and called anybody and said, what the hell's going on here? Or, how did this happen or anything like that? Have you gotten involved other than appointing the personnel department?
Well, I've certainly have passed along the questions that I've heard raised, including the ones that you've asked, and I've asked them to make sure that their questions are getting answered, and that if Sandy needs the assistance of the police department, that that they can get involved and assist with whether it's interviewing witnesses or whatever's necessary. And I've seen some. I've certainly have seen some of the emails. I think the key ones that sort of shed light on what exactly happened, and what I hope comes out of this is I hope what there will be a set of as much as we can with any investigation. There are always some questions, like can't answer like every conceivable question, right? But there are degrees of clarity that can emerge from any investigation. I suspect this one will be pretty clear, just given what appears to be a fairly extensive email chain. And what I want to see, frankly, is I don't want to see something like this happen again. I think there may be changes in the way the city stewards property owned by others. We've talked about this before. I mean, that has to change. We don't want to come to say, we're never going to hold property for somebody else again, because it could be a valuable service. I used the example last time about the Neptune statue, the one that used to be on the waterfront when it was replaced by the Fisherman's Memorial, right by Pier 3, right? So that thing belongs. As it turns out, the city thought that it owned it all these years when it was put into place back in, I think, the 60s. Turns out that it's actually the Whaling Museum that owns the thing. So the Whaling Museum wants to put it somewhere, and is making plans for that, as I understand it. But it's being stored in the city yard, and that thing's probably valuable. I just assume it is. And we need to have a more formal policy in place when we take these things on. It's good that the city can store that for the Whaling Museum. When we store things for nonprofits, we're doing New Bedford nonprofits. We're doing a service for them, which is useful to them, right? They don't have to pay storage fees for some item, right? And it saves them money, and they have tight budgets and whatnot. But we've got to make sure that the city isn't on the hook for more liability, that the thing can be properly stored, and if we can't properly store it, then we shouldn't be storing it. And that so there may be some once all the the inquiry is done here with respect to the wood, then maybe we'll have a better sense of what that policy should look like. But I think that a minimum that has to emerge from this process.
So you mentioned an email chain. Is it one particular email chain that's central to this whole thing?
Well, as I said last time, let's have the full picture emerge, and and as I told you, it's important for me to provide as a clear of a picture as we possibly can. I do think, and look, and I get it. People are talking about this, and I would be too. I would just ask people to be patient. People working very hard on this to make sure that there is as thorough of a statement of facts, a revelation of facts as possible, and so once that happens, then I think people can draw their own conclusions. I'll draw my own conclusions as well.
All right, and I'm not going to belabor it much further than this, but I think there's a general sense, and it may be based in nothing more than just speculation, but there's a sense that the wood went from person A to person B, and maybe it was sold over to person C or whatever. But I'm getting a sense from what you said a little bit earlier in the conversation that the wood may have actually been divided up, and some of it went here, some of it went there. So it could have gone in multiple locations, multiple people involved.
Right. So and getting a handle on that, and I don't, as I sit here, don't have a complete handle on that, but getting a handle on that as much as we can is important.
Does it appear somebody was selling that to other people, or?
Yeah, I think that, again, that's a fair question, and that's a question they're asking, and we'll run the ground as much as they conceivably can.
All right. So when do you hope to have this all wrapped up?
I'd like to have it wrapped up yesterday, right for New Year's, right?
Yeah.
Look, they're working away on it. I mean, they've been through. I mean, to go through. You're talking about, searches of a ton of emails and using, fairly broad search terms like the term wood, right? You can imagine how in an organization as large as city government, how many emails the word wood yields in the course of in a given year, right? So they've got to go through that. And in fact, I think for one of the years, the word wood yielded 40,000 emails, right? Wow. So, and people might say, well, why are you messing around with all that? Because, if we just came out, if we said, here's the report, and there was no effort to look at emails, you'd fairly say, well, why didn't you look at emails, right? So I think what you'll see is, at the end of the day, is a really strong effort to get to the bottom of it, and then we can talk about what that means going forward for the operation of DPI or city government more generally, especially when it comes to projects, attempts to store things for others that they've even for the best of purposes.
Now, what about storing things? I've heard that other things may be missing too. Artworks from the library and various things like that. I mean, these things take on a whole life of their own once we start talking about it. But
I think there is, years and years ago, I think there were some issues. I mean, like when I say years, I mean like decades ago, there were issues around artwork. Leaving the library. I shouldn't even laugh at it, but that was something. And some of that may be urban legend, some of that may not be. No, we're not talking about stuff that the city owns. We're talking about stuff that's being stored for others, and so it's a rare instance that we do something like this, and that's maybe why there isn't a policy in place. It's not like every day that some nonprofit says, "Hey, can you store this stuff for a city of New Bedford?" I mean, the only other instance I can think of is the statue that the Whaling Museum owns. We'll make sure that there's an inventory of those things that are owned by others and stored by us. I don't think it's going to yield much in the way of items, but we just want to make sure that we get to the bottom of that, and that any future favors that we do for nonprofits along the same lines are done according to a formal policy.
Has there been any communication from the state about all of this with the wood? Has anybody from the state called up and said, "John, where's my wood?" I mean, has anybody asked? Has there been a conversation?
Not with me personally, no.
Okay, but potentially there could have been a conversation somewhere.
Well, I'm sure Sandy Vizina called DCR and as part of her work. Yeah.
Have you had a discussion with Scott Lang about the agreement that was made in 2009, or is that really not relevant at this point?
No, I mean, look, I mean, so the short answer to your question is no. Whatever the agreement, I think and no matter what it looked like, I mean, the understanding is that this was stuff owned by the Ernestina, and the city was storing it, and then the city for whatever reason, let it go out the door.
Just looking at a list of generally for those who want to know where we get our questions from and our topics from. I prepare a list, and the mayor also prepares a list, and we kind of go back and forth off the list. And sometimes things get asked, and some things don't get asked. But there's something here that I was inquiring about. It was going to inquire about that you've listed here, and maybe you can describe it for the audience. But the Christmas tree pickup is always an important issue this time of year, and so
indeed it is. Although I don't like taking that Christmas tree down.
Yeah,
it's
mine's
just
still
sitting
on.
there.
Well, yours will be up till July. I mean, yours will be up till the trees just fall
so
right
don't
off.
do as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're trashed, so follow the bouncing ball. All right. So Christmas tree pickup begins the week of January 7, a day after trash recycling pickup. So what this means is, if your regular trash day is this Friday, right? Which would mean actually that your trash is being picked up on Saturday because of the holiday. Right? So here we go. We're getting confused now. But if you're a Friday person, your tree day is next Monday. If your trash day is Monday, your tree day is Tuesday, and so forth. I mean, it's kind of like refuse.
So what
right?
if your trash gets picked up on Saturday? Do they come and get your tree on Sunday, or
no?
That'll be Monday, right?
That would be. Yeah.
I'm just trying to confuse you. That's all.
It's all on the city website.
Or you can just go dump it at Brookline Park.
So, and there are drop-off locations. So there's one pretty much all in each part of the city. One in the north end, one in the south end, and one sort of in the west end. And so there's that's also on the city website. So you got to take all the ornaments off, the lights and the tinsel and whatever else. The candy, I don't know if you put candy on your tree berries. You got to get rid of that. But there's one in the south end. Again, I won't go through all the dates here, but you can drop these off through January 11th. There's one at the beach parking lot in East Rodney French, one at Brookline Park, over by the Pony League field, which is on the Irvington Street side, the south side of the park. And then there's also drop-off availability at the transfer station on Shawman Avenue. But go to the website; it'll be there. But it starts next week.
All right. And if you have a fake tree like mine, will they come
Just
and take the decorations off?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. Yeah. I looked at my Christmas tree and I'm like, you know what? I just don't, because I get it so late, right? So I want to hold on to it for longer.
Yeah.
If I bought it right after Thanksgiving, then I'd be like, okay, let's get rid of this thing. But right now, I need to have it up a little bit.
We decorate to the nines. We really decorate a lot in our house. Not outside, but inside. We decorate the house a lot, and it's so much work. So much work.
Are you one of those houses that you can see from astronauts?
You can see us, from the space station. Yeah, you can see us, yeah. So,
like that, what is it, that Geico commercial?
Yeah. So Sue said it was supposed to rain Tuesday. So Sue said, well, let's take the tree down Tuesday. And I'm like, woke up and the sun came out. And I'm like, this was just not meant to be. We're not gonna. So we got to go out, and we went out, and so the tree is still there. And my son's coming home for a visit on Sunday. So now it's like we got to leave the tree up until Zach comes home so he can see it, right?
Of course. Wouldn't be home without it.
Yeah.
Home for the holidays. And
so we're looking at maybe mid-January before we're going to get the damn thing down. So
make sure you water it.
Yeah, it's a fake one.
Oh, it's a fake one.
Yeah, I can say, I might just throw a sheet over it. And,
Yeah. All right. That's one more thing on my to-do list. Although I get the kids to do all that stuff. I mean, I'm going to have to carry it out of the house.
Well, people today do take their trees, if it's a fake tree, and they'll take all the ornaments off and they'll put Easter ornaments on it or Valentine ornaments. And
they do?
They do. Some people do. That's a thing. That's a real thing. Yeah. I don't do that, but.
I don't do that.
No.
You can only do that with a fake tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All
right. I get it. So anyway, people should just go to the city website. You can see it all there, and you can unload your trees without too much trouble.
All right, so the legislature and the governor's office and all the money people got together this week, surprisingly, and they came to an agreement on what they think we're going to have for revenue for this fiscal year coming up. And it looks as though they're expecting that we're going to see revenue grow by about 2.7%, which is really
modest.
Well, it's better than some had thought, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's not. Inflation is up, so it's not running that much higher than inflation. maybe they're being conservative. Yeah, I don't know. One of the big things that that I and others are pushing for this year with the legislature is a change in the school aid formula, Chapter 70 formula, because we think that we're getting shortchanged. The cities in the state are getting shortchanged given the cost of charter schools, given the cost of healthcare and pensions and so forth. Less so pensions in the school department because the teachers' pensions are picked up by the state. But yeah, we need more money in our schools, and there's a formula that's in place that's dated. It really doesn't take into consideration the costs associated with, for instance, educating kids whose first language is not English. At least it doesn't adequately take into consideration what that costs these days, or health care, or some of the special ed costs that we incur. So, that's going to be a big push. So, it's the revenue projection. What the revenue projection, the implication of the revenue projection implications are, among other things, that state aid will probably not go up all that much this year. So, the legislature is going to have some deciding to do. There's this real strong push among a lot of folks around the state for more education aid. Yet at the same time, the state's saying, well, we can't afford to be doing much more. So, to be continued. I think this is something that we're going to be talking about for the next few months, Barry, because it really hits home here.
And when you think about it, I guess, and put it in perspective, 2.7% increase over the current fiscal year, and everybody under the Gold Dome is getting a 5.5% pay raise.
Yes. Funny how that happens.
Ready to grab some calls?
Yeah. Let me just make sure I grab the right set of headphones here. It's a little bit of a spaghetti bowl. Okay.
Is that plugged in? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, my God. Way too loud.
There we go. All right. 508-996-0500 is the phone number. We got some folks that have been waiting for a long time. Let's do it. You're up first with the mayor on WBSM. Happy New Year.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hello?
Oops, did we lose him?
Are you there?
Barry, what did you do?
We lost you. All right, we'll try this one. You're next to WBSM. Good afternoon.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello?
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 Hello? All right, something's going on here where, hold on. Maybe somebody in the tech staff can come give me a hand with this because, hold on, I'm going to put you back on hold. Obviously, the people that are on the lines are not hearing us, but we're hearing them. So maybe we need to reboot the phone system. Phone system sometimes needs to be rebooted. So we'll see if somebody can't do that. John just went for a run down the hall to see if he can figure that out for us. How do we finish off the year in terms of fentanyl fatalities and fentanyl use? Have we got any numbers?
Yeah, I don't. I don't, and that's something I don't have the final statistics. We're trending downward, but I just want to. I think that's a good question. I don't have that. We can get that. Oh, Tim just came in.
Tim just
pushed
walks
the button.
in, hits a button, and that's it. The whole button.
Making
Problem itself.
Making
Thank
it
you,
look
Tim.
easy. All right.
Thank you very much. All right, let's get back to your calls. Appreciate you hanging on. We got it fixed now. You can hear us. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, what's up?
All right, so Jon Mitchell.
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
Chuck Bailey, New Bedford firefighter.
Oh, hey, Chuck.
Got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
The city has a $4 million surplus. You just took out a $6.5 million loan to clean up Buttonwood Pond, but the ceilings in our fire stations are falling down. We're blacking out a piece every day, but we have a $4 million surplus. Why is a piece being blacked out every day? If we have a $4 million surplus, why is the city funding more of the pension? Why are you asking the city employees to come up with a more larger portion of their health insurance?
All right, Chuck, let the mayor answer your question. Go ahead.
I appreciate Chuck's identifying himself. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of apples and oranges. I mean, what we try to do every year, there's and you have to budget in a way that results in a surplus, right? Not in a deficit, because if you end up in a deficit, then you got to go back to taxpayers and say, hey, can you make up for the rest? So we've taken, so with this year, with that surplus from last year, we're putting into things that need to be fixed. And that includes work on, that includes buying a set of 8 police cruisers and a few other unmarked police cars, because we want to make sure that we obviously do value public safety. We want to make sure that that's being taken care of. There are some water quality issues and have been for an awfully long time at Sasquin Pond, and we're using some of that money to filter the pond better, to filter the runoff better there, which has been a long-standing problem. And there are a number of other maintenance issues that we're getting at. There's
what about the ceilings? You mentioned the ceilings in the fire stations. Is that how many?
So I'm not aware of what exactly he's referring to.
What stations are you talking about, Chuck?
Station 6 in particular, but every station's falling apart. I don't understand how water runoff is a major issue when you're blacking out a fire apparatus every day, putting every citizen at risk. And thank God the chief had the balls to open Ladder 1 on Christmas Day, the day of the fire. I mean, you want to gamble and you go back to the taxpayers and you're going to raise the tax base when you.
What would it cost? Let me just ask. What would it cost to put that engine back that we shut down every day? What would it cost annually to have that back in the budget?
That's roughly a little over $1 million a year. Off the top of my head, so don't quote me on, but that's my understanding. That's an operational cost. The surplus is things. It is unwise to use a surplus for operational for recurring costs. That's how cities get into fiscal messes. When you have a surplus, you use it on one-time things that allow you to address discrete needs. So, putting a filter in underneath a manhole by Sasquin Pond can help them with their water quality issues that have gone back for decades. Ask anybody who lives around Sasquin Pond, and they will tell you that they will give you a chapter and verse on the need to make that water clearer.
Chuck,
just let me finish, because he's accusing me of neglecting things, and he's not right. As much as I respect Chuck, there's a lot more to this than what he's alleging. In addition, police cars we've used, and the previous administration did the same thing. We've used free cash to buy police cars. We'd like to get to a point where we just build that into the operating budget. We're not flush enough with cash to be doing that, so we've tried to stretch the life of our police cruisers longer and spend free cash on that. As far as the stations go, my administration has put more money into fire stations than any in recent memory, and more money into new fire apparatuses than any administration in recent memory. So,
were you aware of the issue with Station 6 with the roof?
No, and I'd be happy to, if Chuck wants to raise, we can certainly reach out to Chuck. And I don't know if Chuck is speaking on behalf of the union right now or just as himself individually. And again, I appreciate that he's identified himself, but we'd be happy to have that Mark Champagne, who's in charge of the city's facilities, to talk to him about the condition of Station 6 and frankly, my administration is going to be the first one to build a new fire station in the city since the mid-'50s. So we've been putting money into the fire department like few others have, frankly, in anybody's lifetimes, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, let me just quickly, Chuck, first of all, your reaction to what the mayor just said. And then the mayor also stated that if you take money from a surplus and you put it into a department like that to restore that, you're creating yourself a structural deficit. The next year you're only going to have to deal with it again. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I don't understand how you go back to the tax base and raise taxes, property taxes, if you're cutting services and you have a surplus.
All right. Well, I think you just addressed that.
The reason that the pressure is on the levy, it comes from essentially 3 sources. It's pensions, it's healthcare, and it's charter schools. I mean, that is the biggest drivers of the budget and have been for several years now. And those are things that are largely outside the city's control.
All right, Chuck, I appreciate your call. Give me a call back in the next hour if you want to talk more about it. I want to give some other folks a chance. 508-996-0500. You're up next with the mayor on WBSM. Go ahead.
I feel the same way as the gentleman. Why the city is raising taxes and there's a surplus of $4.5 million. My taxes has went up over $1,500 on the last 3 years. How in the world can I go raise the rent for people who are on fixed income? What kind of faith do I have to ask them money if they are on a fixed income, if they have problems? I mean, why the city puts trees? If the city doesn't have money, why do they put trees on the streets? To keep the streets more dirty than what they are? Breaking the sidewalks with the roots from the trees?
All right, let's let the mayor respond because we get your point. Your point
the
is
trees themselves don't cost much money, but no. Look, I mean, we're in a situation and have been where we have costs imposed on us by state requirements for pensions, for employee pensions, employee health care, although that in the last year or so has softened somewhat. And charter schools that puts us in an untenable position. You know, we've cut the city employs. I'm putting aside the school department for the moment, but the rest of the city government employs 200 fewer employees than it did some 12 years ago or so. There have been significant trimming back of a number of things in city government along the way, in not to mention the fact that the city's been able to save a great deal of money by getting a new health care plan. Would have been a lot worse. I think if we hadn't done that, the city saved a considerable amount of money in energy because of all the solar projects that we've done. We've consolidated departments. This is the thing. I mean, the caller is absolutely right. She is absolutely right. It's not. It is. There's too much. Too much has been asked for by city taxpayers, and there has to be some kind of reckoning at the state level. Understand that cities like us, and it's not just New Bedford. It's it's Brockton, it's Springfield, it's a number of others that are put in a very precarious financial position because of state mandates.
What seems to be the question here is, though, if we've got a $4.5 million surplus, and that was addressed by both callers,
right?
Why are we cutting back on fire service, or why are my taxes going up? We got $4.5 million. Why should that happen?
Well, a lot of that money is going into stabilization, right? Because our stabilization fund is down, right? And a fair amount of it also is going into the employee health care, retiree healthcare trust fund that we set up. So it's being saved for rainy day for these expenses that could be down the line. That's where the biggest of all the chunks is going. The others are going to maintenance. And the reality is that the city has a great deal of maintenance issues that have were kicked down the road for years and years and years, both in the school department as well as the roadway that we see, and so we have to continue to to chip away at that. It's not a good situation, and my concern is what happens when we hit a recession. And what we're trying to do now is to take care of those maintenance issues before we get to a point where we can't even afford to do that.
How much went to rainy day out of the 4.5?
It was.
This is the free cash we're talking about, right? The 4.5 million.
Right. So I think it ended up being about a quarter of the whole. I can go back and get that answer for you because it's been a few weeks since I looked at that.
Roughly $1 million. Roughly $1 million went into basically in the bank for a rainy day.
Right.
Okay. 508-996-0500 is our phone number, and I do have to take a real quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this at 1420 WBSM. Got to put the microphone on. Welcome back to the program. First day of the year, and not first day of the year, it's the second day of the year, but the first day back after the new year. And
yes. This is the time of year when you're writing a check or signing something, you put the year before down. Right?
Absolutely.
It takes me about 3 weeks to get it right.
Does it?
Yeah.
I don't write that often anymore. Everything is computer. You do it in the computer, and
it must be nice.
but I don't put dates. I can't remember. I don't write checks anymore. Do you write checks still?
Yeah.
Well, you write them for the city, right? But I mean, you
I don't
write checks
I
at
don't
home
write
now?
the check. Yeah.
Everything's online. I mean, or I use my debit card. I can't remember though. I don't even think I have checks. I don't think I've had any checks for like
Really?
2 years. Yeah.
You're pretty tech savvy then.
Well, I
You
guess,
wouldn't know that
right?
by the problems you've had with the phone today, Barry. But
Yeah,
yeah.
right. 508-996-0500. You're next with the mayor. Go ahead.
Two quick questions.
Yep.
Is there any new fire apparatus being ordered this year?
Yes.
And when is the new fire station going to stop being built? And is there any fire apparatus being ordered?
Yeah, I think there are 2 new engines that are in the pipeline, and the new station on Brock Avenue is in the design phase now. The city's acquired the property. I'm talking about the former St. Anne's Church site, and we'll start to see at some point this year construction begin there, and it'll go on until next year, 2020, and that's when it'll be open.
508-996-0500. You're next with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm going to be very quick because I don't have much time. I'm going to explain to your listeners why taxes went up this year and why they're going to go up next year. We've bonded out for over $100 million in the last 2 years. We haven't made any budget cuts that should have been made. And like the mayor said,
But hold on. Actually, the taxes went down this year. Taxes are going down.
no, the rate went down.
The rate went
valuation
down.
Right.
up.
But the valuation's gone up. So, I mean, that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
All right, let me get to what else is why the taxes are going up. We're not making the budget cuts. We have to go on an austerity program. Either Scott Lang or John, don't take it personal, but they've never made budget cuts that they promised. That's why our taxes go up. We have to cut services. It's as simple as that.
All right, I got to hold you right there because we got the news coming up. We got to cut service. It's as simple as that. Is it that simple?
It wouldn't even, of the things that we can control, it wouldn't put a dent in it. That's the problem. It's the stuff that you don't see, right? Healthcare, pensions, charters. That's over the last several years. That's what's been driving it, and that's largely dictated by state policy.
All right, we're out of time.
All right, Barry. Till
Appreciate
next
you
week.
coming in.
Thank you.
Aren't you glad you came
Happy
in?
New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you, John. Happy New Year to you. We're out of time. We're going to break for the news. We've got ABC News. Then Tim is in the WBSM newsroom. Then the weather forecast, and we're back on the other side. Stay tuned.